Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm here at SMTAi Chicago, and I'm joined by Michael Skinner from USTech to wrap up at the end of day 2. Michael, it's been an interesting show. Lots of the usual smart factory talk, lots of Industry 4.0 discussions. What have you seen and heard today?
I think today was interesting because I was able to get a better look at the Fuji line. They have their Nexon process control software, and they have their partners like Ko-Young and Heller there for inspection and for reflow. And I think it's a good, at least for this show in the US and the Midwest, it's a good example of what we can see from contract manufacturers who may have to piece together various equipment and still want to meet this sort of Industry 4.0 efficiency.
Yeah, and Fuji are interesting. They've just announced a new partnership, I believe, with Aegis. So seeing those kind of collaborations between the platform providers and the software providers, I think that's an interesting step, a big collaboration going forward.
I agree, yeah, and I think it's good to see companies like Aegis with their factory logic software. It's NPI sort of focused, and that Fuji is able to grab kind of the best parts of these and wrap them together into one holistic idea, which is totally necessary with all these different vendors.
Yeah, and when we see all that factory intelligence, we've been talking about machines making their own decisions. That's kind of moving forward, and I think I saw on the front cover of a publication the idea of the lights out facility. I know you've been speaking to Ranco, who I think presented about that. Where do you see that going? Where do you see the different players getting involved in that?
I think we're just starting to see it now. The concept of lights out manufacturing is pretty old. I read that the idea has been around since like the 1950s. There was a sci-fi story about machines building machines, And then in 2001, I know the first factory that really implemented this was Fanuc, the Japanese robotics manufacturer, and they were entirely lights out. And I know one of their process managers had said something about how, it's not even just lights out, like we don't turn the heat on or the air conditioning at all either. We save so much money just having it run 24/7 on its own.
Yeah, and I think when I speak to Ranco, he has these ideas of islands of intelligence where each machine has the intelligence. Boards come into the process; those boards are able to find their own way through. He talks about a product choosing a line in the same way we would choose a checkout in the supermarket. The one that's going to be most efficient for us based on what we can see. I'm curious to how realistic that actually is in terms of performance and what can be achieved, but there are certainly a lot of players in that market.
I agree. I think that's an interesting thought because it will have to be paired with, like you mentioned, some sort of overarching intelligence that says what to do with the information on the tags on the boards and what is really the most efficient. Like I can open Google Maps and it will tell me, oh, don't take this route, take that route because there's a crash on this. Yeah. But I wouldn't be able to figure that out and it be efficient information if I just saw the wreck from 4 miles up the street. I have to also see alternate routes. So I think we need these partnerships with these software companies to be able to direct the actual process inside, of course.
Yeah. And just the takeaways from SMTA, always an interesting event in terms of the conference program, in terms of people to speak to. A little bit quieter than perhaps some people would hope on the show floor, but I think that's inevitable when so many people are coming for the conference primarily and are just finding their way down here afterwards. But I think it still has a very strong place in the calendar and for the market.
I agree. I think it's valuable just for the networking. I mean, you get to see your colleagues that you may see once or twice a year for certain companies. The conference is very strong. And I don't think it's any less valuable. I know a lot of people might be disappointed that their sales numbers are a little lower from this show specifically, but like we talked about yesterday, there are so many other ways to buy machines now that it doesn't have to just be an open, noisy marketplace. The model is changing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's evolving. Michael, thanks very much for stopping by. Thanks for chatting. It's been fun to have you at the show again, and we'll see you in a few weeks in Munich for Productronica.
We will. Thank you.